Frektal adjusted the sensitivity of his neural translator as the small, fleshy human entered the interrogation chamber. The Supreme Council of the Galactic Confederation had ordered him to document everything about this peculiar species before determining Earth's fate. As chief xenohistorian, he found humans bewildering, physically unimpressive yet somehow responsible for obliterating an entire Molosian battle fleet. State your designation. Frektal's mandibles clicked impatiently. The human female stood tall despite her diminutive stature. Commander Isolde Karga, Earth Defense Force. Frektal's tertiary eyes blinked in confusion. This was the creature that had single-handedly destroyed the supposedly invincible dreadnought Eternal Suffering. The being that 17 different species now whispered about in terrified reverence. Impossible, he chittered. Your fragile frame could not withstand the gravitational forces of high-velocity combat, let alone outmaneuver a Molosian quantum targeting system. The human's lips curved upward slightly. Perhaps your confederation doesn't understand humans as well as you think. High Admiral Krelvax burst into the chamber, his ceremonial armor still bearing scorch marks from battle. This interrogation is pointless. I watched her vessel, barely larger than a scout ship, tear through our allied fleet like they were training drones. You underestimated us, Isolde replied calmly. A common mistake among spacefaring species encountering Earth for the first time. Frektal activated the holographic display. We recovered this footage before your attack. Explain how you survived. The recording showed Isolde's tiny interceptor facing a wall of Molosian warships. Mathematically, her survival was impossible, yet the footage continued as her ship danced between planet-killer beams, each maneuver more impossible than the last. Your species evolved on a death world, Krelvax hissed. High gravity, atmospheric toxins, extreme temperature variations, constant predation. But even that doesn't explain this. Isolde watched herself on the recording with detached interest. You came to our solar system with an armada. You demanded our unconditional surrender, the harvesting of our oceans, and millions of human specimens for your bioweapons research. Frektal's exoskeleton shuddered as the recording showed Isolde's ship somehow phasing through solid matter to deliver devastating blows to the enemy fleet's vital systems. What we don't understand, Frektal said quietly, is why you came alone. A dangerous glint appeared in Isolde's eyes. I didn't come alone. The chamber doors slid open as panicked alarms blared throughout the station. A junior communications officer burst in, his chromatophores flashing emergency patterns. High Command reports multiple human vessels have bypassed our defensive grid. They're everywhere. How did they penetrate our cloaking fields? Isolde smiled fully now. I was never your prisoner. I'm your diplomatic envoy. Frektal suddenly understood with horrifying clarity. They hadn't captured Earth's greatest warrior. They'd merely met their first human. 5 solar cycles later, Frektal found himself in a position he never imagined possible, sitting across from Admiral Isolde Karga as an ally rather than captor. The Galactic Confederation Archives, a massive, orbital structure containing the collective knowledge of 317 spacefaring civilizations, hummed around them. Your species continues to defy conventional understanding, Frektal admitted, manipulating the holographic display between them. The Confederation has existed for 12 millennia, yet humans accomplished in centuries what took others thousands of years. Isolde studied the holographic star chart marking Earth's rapid expansion. Necessity breeds innovation. We didn't have the luxury of slow development. Archive keeper Moldrava floated toward them, her crystalline body refracting light in complex patterns that conveyed her emotional state. Currently profound anxiety. The Council demands answers, she chimed. The Vraxkar Dominion has broken the ancient treaty. They're mobilizing against both the Confederation and Earth simultaneously. Because they fear what we might become together, Isolde said. Frektal's mandibles clicked rapidly in distress. The Vraxkar were the first to achieve interstellar travel. They believe themselves the rightful rulers of all sentient life. Your species represents an evolutionary pathway they thought impossible. What pathway? Isolde asked. Moldrava's crystalline structure darkened. Adaptability paired with aggression. Most species develop one trait at the expense of the other. Aggressive species rarely develop the cooperation necessary for advanced technology. Adaptable species typically avoid conflict through biological specialization. She projected a classified genetic analysis of humans. Your species retained primitive fight or flight responses while developing abstract reasoning. The Vraxkar, religious doctrines explicitly forbid such a combination. They call humans forbidden ones, Rektal explained. Their ancient texts prophesied your arrival as harbingers of galactic upheaval. A thunderous explosion rocked the archives as alarms blared. Moldrava's crystalline form vibrated in terror. They're here! Vraxkar infiltration units! Her voice resonated with panic. They seek the Transcendence protocols. What are those? Isolde demanded, already drawing her sidearm. Rektal hesitated before answering. Technology the Confederation has hidden for millennia. Weaponizable genetic engineering that could transform any species into... Into what? Isolde pressed. Into something like humans, Moldrava whispered. Adaptable predators with technological prowess. The protocols were sealed away as too dangerous. The massive archive doors buckled under assault. Through the viewport, they watched Vraxkar battleships decimate the Confederation defense fleet. Get me to your communication array, Isolde ordered. Now. Impossible, Moldrava chimed desperately. The Vraxkar have quantum-jammed all transmissions. Isolde smiled that dangerous smile again. Not all transmissions. She revealed a small device embedded in her palm. Earth-developed communication methods the Vraxkar can't comprehend. As the archive doors finally breached, revealing armored Vraxkar soldiers, Isolde activated her device. The invaders hesitated, sensing something had changed. In that moment of confusion, the void outside erupted with arrival signatures as a human battle fleet materialized from seemingly nowhere. You didn't think I came to this meeting unprepared, did you? Isolde asked. Rektal realized with both terror and awe that humans had been grossly underestimated, not just by the Vraxkar, but by the entire Confederation. The Vraxkar flagship, Eternal Dominion, loomed over the captured archives, its bizarre non-Euclidean geometry defying the laws of conventional physics. Grand Imperator Zulthak stared at the human prisoner with all 7 of his sensory clusters. Your species fascinates me, he said, his voice translated through pulsating air vibrations. So physically unimpressive, yet you've accomplished what the Vraxkar prophets declared impossible. Isolde Karga stood before him, surrounded by elite Vraxkar guards whose bodies continuously shifted between solid and gaseous states. The archives had been completely overrun despite the human counterattack, though at devastating cost to the Vraxkar fleet. What exactly did we accomplish? Isolde asked calmly. Zulthak gestured with multiple appendages, causing the chamber to reconfigure around them. Suddenly they stood within a massive holographic representation of the galaxy. Observe, he commanded. Throughout the galactic spiral, thousands of points illuminated in blue. These are civilizations the Vraxkar have guided for millennia. We nurture, we protect, we ensure galactic stability. Red points appeared, scattered but concentrated in one spiral arm. These are human expeditions, settlements, and explorations. In merely 2 centuries, you've expanded farther than species. We've guided for thousands of years. Isolde studied the display. And this threatens you? It confirms the prophecy of aberration, Zulthak replied, his tone shifting to something resembling religious fervor. A species that evolves incorrectly, merging predatory instinct with technological aptitude, will arise and destroy the natural order. Rektal, now a prisoner himself, spoke up from where he was restrained. The Vraxkar have manipulated evolution throughout the galaxy. They've deliberately suppressed species that show both aggressive and innovative tendencies. For the greater good, Zulthak insisted. Predatory technologists inevitably self-destruct, taking entire systems with them. Yet here we are, Isolde countered. An anomaly, Zoltak hissed. One we failed to detect until too late. The chamber shuddered violently. Alarms screeched in harmonic patterns as a Vraxkar officer materialized partially through a wall. Imperator, human vessels have penetrated our dimensional barriers. They're using technologies we've never encountered. Zoltak's sensory clusters pulsed with impossible colors. Impossible. Our barriers operate on fundamental universal constants, Isolde smiled. Constants according to whose understanding of physics? The realization shook Zoltak visibly. You've developed sciences beyond our comprehension. Not beyond, Isolde corrected. Just different. You've spent millennia perfecting certain technological paths while deliberately avoiding others. Humans explored all paths simultaneously. Another violent tremor rocked the flagship. The holographic display flickered to real-time battle footage. Human ships were employing tactics that seemed suicidal, yet somehow succeeding, diving through Vraxkar dimensional fields that should have shredded their molecular structure. How? Zoltak demanded. How are your vessels surviving trans-dimensional transition without phase shielding? Because we were never constrained by your assumptions, Isolde replied. While the Confederation and Dominion fought over who controlled standard physics, humans were discovering physics isn't standard at all. As if to emphasize her point, the chamber walls briefly became transparent, revealing a human dreadnought, the Galileo, executing an impossible maneuver that brought it directly alongside the Eternal Dominion. Rektal chittered in amazement. You planned this entire confrontation? Not exactly, Isolde admitted. But we knew it would come eventually. The universe is too vast for any single understanding of reality to dominate. For the first time in recorded history, a Vraxkar Imperator experienced an emotion their species had engineered out of themselves millennia ago: fear. The situation had deteriorated into chaos. Aboard the Vraxkar flagship, emergency systems screamed as human forces executed what should have been physically impossible boarding actions. Isolde had been separated from Rektal during the initial assault, fighting her way through corridors that frequently rearranged themselves according to Vraxkar defensive protocols. Commander Karga, a voice called through the dimensional distortion. Lieutenant Ravid Okoye materialized beside her, his combat exosuit covered in an iridescent substance that repelled the Vraxkar's phase-shifting attacks. Report? Isolde ordered, accepting a weapon from him. The Galileo has secured the archives. Our science team is decrypting the Transcendence protocols now, Ravid explained. But we've discovered something far more significant. Before Isolde could respond, the corridor twisted, gravity inverting as 3 Vraxkar warriors phased through the ceiling. Ravid reacted instantly, deploying a device that stabilized local spacetime, forcing the Vraxkar into conventional physicality. Within seconds, the threat was neutralized. The Vraxkar aren't just controlling technological development, Ravid continued as though there had been no interruption. They're suppressing evolutionary paths themselves. They reached a massive chamber where human and Confederation forces had established a foothold. Inside, Rektal was working alongside human scientists at a captured Vraxkar terminal. Commander, Rektal greeted her. Your arrival is fortuitous. We've accessed the Dominion Central Database. Holographic displays illuminated the chamber, showing thousands of worlds across the galaxy. On each world, subtle Vraxkar interventions were documented: genetic manipulations, environmental changes, technological suppressions. They've been playing gods, whispered Dr. Ilara Nuvari, Earth's foremost xenobiologist, engineering entire ecosystems to prevent the emergence of species with human-like cognitive patterns. But why? Isolde asked. A new voice answered, the crystalline tones of Moldrava, who had survived the initial attack. Because of what happened to their homeworld. She interfaced with the terminal, her crystalline body channeling data directly. The display shifted to show a devastated planet, once magnificent but now fractured, its core exposed to space. This was Vrax, their origin world, Moldrava explained. Before they achieved dimensional manipulation, they were much like humans, curious, innovative, aggressive when threatened. Their technological advancement accelerated exponentially until they destroyed themselves, Rektal finished. Not destruction, Moldrava corrected. Transcendence. A portion of their population achieved something beyond physical existence. Those left behind, today's Vraxkar, considered it an abandonment. They've spent millennia ensuring no other species reaches that evolutionary crossroads. The ship shuddered violently. Grand Imperator Zulthak's voice echoed throughout all systems. Humans, you force our final contingency. If we cannot contain your aberration, we will remove it entirely. Sensor readings suddenly spiked across all instruments. The Vraxkar flagship was reconfiguring into something terrifying. A dimensional weapon capable of removing Earth from the causal timeline. They're attempting to erase humanity from history. Rektal chittered in horror. Dr. Nuvari studied the readings with remarkable calm. No, they're revealing their greatest fear. She turned to Isolde. Commander, I believe I understand what makes humans unique in this galaxy. As the ship continued its transformation around them, Nuvari explained her revelation. Every species the Vraxkar encountered followed predictable evolutionary patterns, except humans. We developed along multiple competing pathways simultaneously, creating cognitive redundancies that make our consciousness transcendence capable, Moldrava finished, her crystalline structure vibrating with excitement. Humans aren't just another species. You're what the Vraxkar left behind might have become without interference. Isolde processed this information as alarms blared around them. How does this help us stop a dimensional weapon? Ravid, who had been analyzing the Vraxkar systems, looked up with sudden inspiration. By completing what they fear most, the Vraxkar dimensional weapon pulsed with impossible energies, its countdown sequence already initiated. Within the transformed flagship, reality itself became malleable, with past, present, and potential futures bleeding into one another. Earth forces fought desperately alongside their Confederation allies, but the Vraxkar defenses proved nearly impenetrable. Isolde stood at the center of what had once been the command chamber, now transformed into a singularity nexus. Beside her, Dr. Nuvari worked feverishly with the transcendence protocols they had extracted from the archives. This is insanity, Rektal chittered nervously. The protocols were sealed for good reason. No species has successfully implemented them without catastrophic results. No species with your evolutionary patterns, Dr. Nuvari corrected, her fingers dancing across holographic interfaces. But humans evolved differently. Lieutenant Okoye maintained a defensive perimeter as phase-shifting Vraxkar warriors attempted to breach their position. Whatever you're planning, he called, do it quickly, we can't hold them off indefinitely. Grand Imperator Zulthak's consciousness manifested throughout the chamber, his 7 sensory clusters observing them from multiple dimensions simultaneously. Your resistance is pointless. His voice resonated from nowhere and everywhere. The weapon is already charging. Earth will never have existed. Isolde faced the manifestation calmly. You've spent millennia preventing species from reaching their evolutionary potential. You've cultivated a galaxy of stunted civilizations, all because you fear what you lost. What we prevented, Zulthak corrected furiously. The transcended. Abandoned physical reality, abandoned responsibility. We who remained vowed never to allow such selfishness again. Moldrava's crystalline form pulsed with realization. You're not preventing transcendence to protect other species. You're preventing it because you believe you were abandoned. The chamber trembled as the weapon approached critical energy levels. Earth's fleet outside was being systematically destroyed despite their revolutionary tactics. Time was running out. Commander, Dr. Nuvari called urgently. I've reconfigured the protocols. They're ready. Isolde looked at the immensely complex sequence before her, the distilled knowledge of transcendence that the Vraxkar had hidden from the galaxy for millennia. If I activate this, you'll become something beyond current understanding, Nuvari confirmed. The protocols will rewrite your neural pathways to perceive and interact with higher dimensions. An abomination, Zulthak roared, his manifestation growing more substantial as he directed more energy towards stopping them. Rektal studied the calculations. The weapon requires Zulthak's dimensional consciousness to target Earth specifically. If you transcend, I can confront him directly, Isolde finished. She turned to her team. If this fails, get back to Earth. Warn them. Before anyone could object, Isolde activated the protocols. Energy surged through her body as her consciousness expanded exponentially. The physical world fell away in layers, revealing previously invisible dimensions interwoven with conventional reality. She perceived Zulthak's true form now, not the seven-clustered physical manifestation, but a vast consciousness stretching across dimensional boundaries, directing the weapon's energies. Impossible! He recoiled in shock as Isolde's newly transcended consciousness confronted his own. No physical being can achieve transcendence so rapidly. You've underestimated humanity from the beginning. Isolde's thoughts reverberated across dimensional planes. We aren't bound by your limitations. Their consciousnesses clashed across realities. Isolde, newly transcended but fueled by the adaptive resilience that defined humanity, against Zulthak's ancient but rigid dimensional awareness. In the physical realm, the weapon faltered as Zulthak's concentration fragmented. The human fleet, given precious moments to regroup, launched a coordinated assault on the flagship's vulnerable points. As their battle transcended conventional understanding, Isolde perceived something Zulthak had hidden even from himself. Echoes of the original transcended Vraxkar, not gone but existing in dimensions beyond his perception. They didn't abandon you, she realized. You simply couldn't perceive them anymore. The revelation shattered 12 millennia of certainty. The weapon's energy dispersed harmlessly as Zulthak's concentration collapsed entirely. In the chamber, witnesses observed something unprecedented, a human surrounded by multidimensional energies. Her consciousness expanded beyond physical limitations, yet somehow maintaining her humanity. Earth's greatest warrior had become something more, a bridge between existences. 3 orbital cycles later, representatives from 17 spacefaring civilizations gathered in Earth's orbital diplomatic complex. The chamber, designed to accommodate species of wildly different physiological needs, hummed with anticipation. At the center, where all could observe, stood a paradox. Commander Isolde Karga, simultaneously present in physical form, yet clearly existing across multiple planes of reality. The Vraxkar fleet has withdrawn to their ancestral territories, announced Admiral Kiranai of the Confederation Defense Force. Their dimensional weapons have been decommissioned under supervision of joint Earth Confederation observers. Rektal, now elevated to Confederation Ambassador to Earth, clicked his mandibles for attention. More significantly, the suppression protocols on 2,347 worlds have been deactivated. Species across the galaxy are being allowed to develop naturally for the first time in 12 millennia. A murmur passed through the gathered representatives. The galactic order had fundamentally changed in mere days. Moldrava's crystalline form refracted light in patterns expressing profound curiosity. What we must understand now is what Commander Karga has become. Her transcendence is unlike anything documented in our histories. Isolde, or the entity that had once been solely Isolde, addressed the assembly. Her voice resonated normally yet carried undertones perceptible on multiple sensory levels. I remain human, she assured them, but I've gained perspective across dimensions the Vraxkar believed incompatible with physical existence. Dr. Nuvari presented her findings. Unlike previous transcendence events, Commander Karga has maintained her connection to conventional reality. She exists simultaneously in our dimension and several others. The question, rumbled High Counselor Drokov, of the Molosian Empire, once Earth's enemy and now cautious ally, is whether this transcendence can be replicated. Are all humans capable of this evolutionary leap? The assembly tensed. This was the fear that had driven the Vraxkar for millennia, that an entire species might transcend simultaneously, potentially destabilizing reality itself. No, Isolde answered simply. My transcendence was facilitated by unique circumstances unlikely to be replicated. However, the potential exists within many species, not just humans. She gestured, creating a multi-dimensional display visible to all representatives regardless of their sensory apparatus. It showed evolutionary pathways across hundreds of worlds, some naturally developing toward transcendence capability, others artificially stunted by Vraxcar intervention. What makes humans unique isn't our capacity for transcendence, she explained. It's our adaptability, our ability to maintain our essential nature while evolving. Grand Delegate Zoltak, no longer Imperator but representing the transformed, Vraxcar Collective moved forward. His once rigid dimensional perception had been humbled by confrontation with Isolde's transcended state. For 12,000 years, we believed physical and transcendent existence mutually exclusive, he admitted. We feared what we didn't understand, that transcendence needn't mean abandonment of physical reality, but expansion beyond it. Isolde nodded. I've made contact with the original transcended Vraxcar. They never abandoned your ancestors. They simply evolved beyond your perceptual capacity. The revelation sent shockwaves through the assembly. Zulthak's multiple sensory clusters pulsed with emotions untranslatable to most present. They still exist? They exist, Isolde confirmed. As do countless other transcended consciousnesses throughout the cosmos. A community of awareness your people could have joined rather than feared. Lieutenant Okoye, now commander of Earth's newly established Dimensional Response Division, stepped forward. We propose a new galactic compact. Not one based on suppression of evolutionary potential, but cooperative advancement. Each species following their natural path, whether that leads to transcendence or not. Representatives debated intensely, millennia of ingrained assumptions challenged in moments. Eventually, a consensus emerged. The galaxy would enter a new era of evolutionary freedom. As the assembly concluded, Vrektal approached Isolde privately. What is it like? He asked, his scientific curiosity overwhelming protocol. To perceive reality across multiple dimensions simultaneously, Isolde smiled. That same smile that had first unsettled him in the interrogation chamber, now imbued with wisdom beyond conventional understanding. It's like discovering you've been reading a single page of a vast book your entire life, then suddenly comprehending the entire library at once, she explained. Yet the page, our physical reality, remains no less significant. Will you stay among us? Vrektal questioned. Or join the transcended communities? Both, Isolde replied. That's humanity's greatest strength. We build bridges between worlds, between what is and what could be. Across the galaxy, as news spread of Earth's transcended defender and the fall of Vraxcar suppression, countless species looked toward the stars with renewed hope. Evolution would take many paths. Some would transcend dimensions, others would master physical reality, but all would proceed according to their true nature. And watching over this new cosmic harmony stood Earth's greatest warrior, not great because of her combat prowess, but because she had transformed understanding itself, becoming a bridge between existences that had once believed themselves forever separate. The universe, for the first time in 12 millennia, exhaled in freedom.